When the phrase Global South started dominating international discussions, few imagined how central it would become to the 21st century power shift. For decades, the world order was dictated by the West. G7 economies, NATO alliances, and institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Emerging nations were often reduced to footnotes in global governance. But that is changing, and changing fast. Today, countries of the Global South, Asia, Africa, Latin America, are no longer content to be silent spectators. They are demanding a seat at the table, and they want their voices heard. Among them, one country is emerging as the face of this transformation. That country is India. Now, why India? Why not China, which has a bigger economy and deeper pockets? Why not Brazil or South Africa, which have historically represented Southern interests? The answer lies in the unique convergence of credibility, trust, and timing. India is positioning itself as the voice of the Global South, not through coercion, but through consensus. Not by exporting authoritarian models, but by leveraging democratic legitimacy and strategic pragmatism. To understand why India is at the center of this shift, we need to go back to the concept itself. Global South is not a geographical term, it's a political and economic identity. It represents nations historically marginalized in the global order, countries that bore the brunt of colonialism and now struggle with inequality in international decision-making. These nations share common aspirations: fair trade, debt relief, climate justice, and technology transfer. But until recently, their voices were fragmented, drowned out by the dominance of Western powers on one side and the ambitions of China on the other. Enter India. The transformation began subtly but gained momentum during India's G20 presidency in 2023. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, India didn't just host a summit, it reframed the agenda. It pushed for the inclusion of the African Union as a permanent G20 member, a move hailed as historic. For the first time, the G20 looked like a truly global platform, not a club of wealthy nations. India's messaging was clear: development, not division; cooperation, not confrontation. And that resonated deeply across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Contrast this with China's approach. Beijing has long claimed to champion the Global South, particularly through its Belt and Road Initiative. But what started as an infrastructure lifeline has become a cautionary tale. From Zambia's debt distress to Sri Lanka's Hambantota port saga, the BRI narrative has shifted from opportunity to dependency. Many nations now view China's model as predatory, designed to entrap rather than empower. India, on the other hand, offers something different: a partnership based on respect, not debt traps. Look at energy diplomacy. When the Russia-Ukraine war triggered a global energy crisis, Western nations scrambled for alternatives. India seized the moment, buying discounted Russian oil and refining it for global markets, including Europe. But it didn't stop there. It engaged Gulf nations aggressively, signing long-term energy and investment deals. The UAE-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is a case in point. Signed in 2022, it slashed tariffs on 80% of goods and paved the way for a $100 billion trade target. Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund is investing billions in India's tech and infrastructure sectors. These moves aren't just about energy, they are about positioning India as an economic hub for the Global South, a gateway between resource-rich nations and emerging markets. Then there's technology. In a world where digital infrastructure defines power, India is exporting not just goods, but governance models. Its Unified Payments Interface (UPI), a revolutionary digital payment system, is now being adopted in countries like Singapore and France. For developing nations, India's digital public goods are a lifeline, a way to leapfrog into the digital age without becoming dependent on Western big tech or Chinese surveillance systems. This is soft power of a new kind, technology as trust. But perhaps India's most powerful card, is its ability to build coalitions without alienating the West. While China's rise is viewed with suspicion, India is seen as a bridge builder. It is part of BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, yet it also belongs to the Quad with the US, Japan, and Australia. It has strong ties with Europe while deepening relations with Africa and Latin America. This dual positioning gives India a unique advantage. It can speak to the global South without being perceived as anti-West. In fact, during its G20 presidency, India managed to broker consensus on critical issues despite tensions over Ukraine. That's not just diplomacy, that's leadership. Consider climate negotiations. For years, developing nations have demanded climate justice, more funding for adaptation, technology transfer, and recognition of historical responsibility. India has amplified that voice. At COP summits, it has consistently argued for equity, pushing back against unrealistic targets imposed by developed nations. At the same time, it has taken bold steps at home, setting ambitious renewable energy goals and leading the International Solar Alliance. For the Global South, this is credibility in action, walking the talk. Africa, in particular, sees India as a reliable partner. Trade between India and Africa stands at over $90 billion, and India is one of the continent's largest investors. But beyond trade, India invests in human capital, training programs, scholarships, healthcare initiatives. This approach contrasts sharply with China's infrastructure-heavy model, which often sidelines local capacity building. In Africa's corridors of power, this difference is noted and appreciated. Latin America, too, is warming up to India. Countries like Brazil and Argentina see India as a partner in creating a more balanced global trade system. With BRICS Plus expanding to include nations from the Middle East and Africa, India's influence is set to grow. But here's the key: India is not trying to dominate BRICS or any other platform, it's trying to democratize them, give every member a voice. That philosophy resonates with nations tired of being dictated to by great powers, whether Western or Eastern. Of course, India faces challenges. Its own development needs are enormous. It has to manage internal political complexities and regional security threats. But those challenges do not diminish its appeal. If anything, they make India more relatable to the global South, a country that understands struggle, that knows what it means to rise against odds. The bigger question is, what does this mean for the world? The answer is simple but profound. If India succeeds in positioning itself as the face of global South diplomacy, it could fundamentally alter the global order. Western dominance will no longer go unchallenged, and China will no longer have a monopoly on representing Southern interests. We could see the emergence of a truly multipolar world, not dominated by two superpowers, but shaped by a coalition of diverse voices, with India at its heart. And this isn't just theory. It's already happening. The African Union's inclusion in the G20, the rise of BRICS Plus, the push for local currency trade, the growing demand for technology transfer instead of aid. These are signs of a tectonic shift. For decades, the global South was a silent majority. Today it is finding its voice, and India is amplifying it. So, how did India become the face of this movement? Not by dictating terms, not by writing blank checks, but by building trust, by offering partnership instead of patronage, by proving that development can be inclusive and sustainable. In a world polarized between East and West, India offers something rare: balance. And in diplomacy, balance is power. The next decade will test this leadership. Can India maintain credibility while pursuing its own interests? Can it navigate the rivalry between the US and China without losing autonomy? These are tough questions, but one thing is clear: the global South has found a champion, and for now, that champion is India.